It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment.
Good moment.
Woohoo! Boy, what wildness in this studio this morning. It is crazy.
Oh,
it's crazy.
Radio making magic.
It's fantastic. And Spence, good morning. I love how you're upsetting all of the apple carts and equipment in here. It's fantastic.
The whole thing.
That's why we have a crack engineer here.
Oh, boy. We got it going today.
Yeah. So lots of interesting stresses to play with. I'm going to tell you. Well, folks, you're probably wondering, what are we stressed about? Well, we're shooting from the hip here.
Name your
We
stress.
don't often shoot from the hip. We usually target up and line it up and take our time on that. We have surprises in store.
Oh,
we'll
boy,
get
we have
to those.
surprises,
We'll get to
folks.
those in just one moment. So we were chatting a little bit before the program. What are you guys doing over there, tossing around?
I'm plugging in.
What are you plugging in?
Yeah.
It's good. I'm glad you're joining us. So we were talking before the program about love after fear in the context of relationships. Love after fear.
I thought we were talking about my fight with my wife.
I thought that was what I thought that was love after fear.
Oh, that's what it is. Love
So
after fear.
you had this very, very.
Well, you stepped in the middle of it. Okay, so let's tell the quick story.
It was my responsibility, wasn't it?
You know, this goes back to several of our wives' shows, which if you haven't tuned in, tune into those. Where
That was a very nifty plug, a very nice
thank
segue.
you.
Yeah.
Years of professional
Yeah.
training.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not this last New Year's, but the New Year's prior, my wife and I revealed that we have a practice, sex practice, that twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays.
That's really good for our numbers, by the way. Just say that again, because when we search engine optimize.
That's right. We make it a point to have a date night.
Mm-hmm.
So it was date night.
Mm-hmm.
And you should have known enough not to call on date night, but you,
you know,
called.
I got to be honest with you.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it.
Mea culpa. I just was not tracking your date
I
night.
think there's some subconscious. No, anyhow, Barnett called me.
But it's on my calendar from now on.
That's right.
This is the date night and lovemaking night.
That's right. So the idea was to get the kids to sleep early, and we were going to watch a film. And we're watching, it doesn't matter what we're watching. A film. And the film turned out to be stressful. And I started getting really agitated. And but Jasmine was into the film. And then somewhere in this, you called, and I got to leave the room and get out from under that film that was just making me crazy. Because I try to avoid stressful, dark, unhappy
No, you're a
films.
flower. I understand.
Stop. Long story short, my little martyred self wanted Jasmine to turn off the film because it was bothering me. And my agenda for the evening was to get to the lovemaking. That's where I was focused.
Yeah, no foreplay.
No. Well,
No,
the foreplay, the movie might have been foreplay.
You
if
wanted
it
to
was
get
like,
you wanted to
know,
get to the foreplay.
I wanted to get to the part of the evening that I was looking forward to. But I mean, often we enjoy a film together, so that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that didn't happen, and I ended up just really frustrated and upset. Jasmine was upset, no lovemaking, and the fight extended for until today, till the next day, right? And anyhow, that's enough of that. Just to say that.
Well, that's such an interesting context because I think it's going to hit home with a lot of people, not necessarily that particular expression of it, but the underlying juice in it is going to hit home for a lot of people. It certainly hits home for me.
Yeah.
We come at these things with certain expectations. We're going to have a date night and we're going to watch a movie. And underneath that, we have a fight about, well, you didn't watch the movie with me, and then I don't want to watch the movie. And underneath that, there's a different set of desires and motivations.
Yeah, big time.
And in this case, you guys had framed out that we're going to have a date night.
Yep.
But there may have been some other agendas that got backed into date night, like I want to catch up on all the Oscar-nominated films one, as opposed to date night.
Yeah.
And number two, I don't want to watch the movies. I want to just get to the main event with.
Well,
and let's broom off the date night.
No, I'm willing to watch the movies, but if the movie's upsetting and stressful, then it's going to spoil my agenda.
Sure.
You know, and I'm open to just saying that was my agenda. And
so what's the real agenda? And we're going to invite some guests who are right now, as we speak, hurtling northward to the Gold Coast Broadcasting Studio.
Yeah.
Hurtling at snail speed in heavy traffic.
Yeah.
But we're going to invite them to weigh in on this. What is the opportunity there to put the clutch in on what is going on for both sides of the relationship, and to say, so what is it that we really, really want? What is underlying the distress that I have? What's the underlying the distress that you have? What are we really after? What do we really, really want here? Because clearly we have different agendas, and we sort of spackle it over with this overarching date night thing. Right. Which shows up as catching up with movies on one side, and I don't want all this stuff in my head on the other side. But underneath it, we sort of lose sight of what date night was, what or could be about, or not. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
No, but I love the way you're setting this up, because already what you're allowing for is complexity. When I'm in my hurt, angry self, I crunch things down very quickly, or my mind does, or my reactive mind maybe is the best way to say it, to sort of right and wrong, good and bad, who should have, what, and start defending my position. And in spite of the fact that I know enough to allow this to be complex and to get compassionate with the part of me that's disappointed, and allow for what the possibility that she has something going on for her, and be having a different experience than what I'm projecting onto her. And so what I like about the way you're approaching this, and it's the right way, is a level of humanity where we can see underneath it and we see the complexity of it. And so let's get our guests on.
Speaking of complexity.
Yeah, really complex. We're going to bring on some folks who are on their way. Orna, are you there? Or Matthew, whoever's joining us?
Yes, we are here.
You are here.
Standing.
Oh, my goodness.
Driving in circles. We're about to come into the place.
Oh, really?
Well, let's do this.
Let's just sort of check. Why don't we take a break?
We're going to take a commercial break. And when we get back, we have some wonderful folks, which we'll tell you about when we get back.
I'm going to tell you about them before we take that break.
That.
You know, we
Who's joining us after the break?
Pulling into the parking lot right now are Orna, my old friend Orna, and Matthew Walters, who are master relationship coaches. They're also the founders of the Love on Purpose Revolution, which is a many of your listeners may already be familiar with, as a global online event that is focused on perforating the bubble that love is supposed to happen all by itself.
Yeah.
You know, we don't participate in that. Otherwise, it's not really love. That's not true love. So we're going to...
And you never fight when you have true love.
Never fight with it. We're going to drill down on that one, put that under the microscope, and hopefully it'll evaporate. But
we'll do all of that when we get
right
back.
after we come back.
So stay with us, because we'll be right back here
with Orna and Matthew.
Here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Yes, thank you for staying with us. For those of you that are watching this and not listening to this in your cars or on your podcast, you may notice that we are no longer estranged from our guests.
We've grown.
We've grown.
Grown to include.
So, Orna and Matt, welcome. We're so glad that you braved the traffic to get in here.
We're so happy to be here.
And I love that you're holding hands, because this is we are talking about relationships.
Yeah.
So you heard what happened with Freeman.
Yes.
And Jazz. Jazz, sorry that we're airing the laundry here.
Well, we air a little.
What do you think?
Well, I like this idea of, fear and love, because they seem so intertwined. We all want to be loved for who we really are, and on some deep level, we seem to be like a little terrified to show up as who we really are, right?
Yeah.
And I think that as far as this, this idea of a date night, and actually, I thought it was interesting that you were talking about this idea of, sort of two different agendas, because ultimately, when you're in a relationship, what happens is that your ego has an agenda, right? Because your ego wants to be right. I know that happens to me. As a matter of fact, Matthew and I joke that, when
It
one
never
of
happens
us,
to Matthew, though.
when one of us says, you're right, we'll say, I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, we actually give each other props, right?
Yeah, can we get that notarized?
If we've had a disagreement about something, even if it's small, like who was in that movie or whatever it was, and we discover that one of us was actually correct, we give props. We say, you know what, you were right. And I think we do that jokingly, but we also do it because it's nice for our ego to go, oh, okay, I didn't have to defend so hard, right? I can be right in that moment.
Yeah.
For our true self to accept that I can be right.
Yeah.
I am right.
Yeah.
And maybe the more important part is, and it's okay to not be right sometimes too. One of the things that Barnett was sort of pointing towards is this fantasy that we all have to recover from, that we're going to meet Mr. or Mrs. Right, proverbially, and that it's all going to be, Fruit Loops and lollipops. It's all going to be, and so the question. So when we talk about fear and love, the big fear is the fight.
Right.
And my sense is, having been married to Jasmine now for 12 years, and having children together, and having lots of arenas wherein her experience and my experience don't align perfectly in any given moment, and we're perceiving things in our own, sort of individual, egoic bubble, that the fight becomes very critical.
Yeah. We had a big blowout just 2 days ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. No, and
I mean that.
It's true, because every time we fight, afterwards we're that much closer. We're that much more connected. In those fights, you say things that you wish you hadn't said. You do things you wish you hadn't done. But we have another practice just between the two of us that we so hold dear, which is that when one of us apologizes, says, I made a mistake. I apologize. I apologize that we fought. I apologize for what I said. I apologize for whatever it was. That when the other person is ready, and only when you're ready, don't do it before, you say, apology accepted. And what you mean in that is that you mean that you're done. I'm not going to hold on to this anymore. I'm not
That's
going
the
to
trick.
bring it up.
That's actually the commitment. The commitment is to
commitment.
being done.
The
Yeah.
trick is you can't hold on to it. That wonderful saying that some people never forget where they buried the hatchet.
Right, exactly.
So when you're done, it means that you step away from it.
But that's why you can't say apology accepted until
Beforehand.
you're completely ready. And so, there are those times, will Matthew
And
say,
that's rough. Right?
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
There and I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And she's looking at me like, I'm just not ready.
There's more we got to talk about. There's more we got to do.
I want to thread back to what I take as the core of the work, the beautiful work that you guys do. And that is to perforate the myth that love should just happen and come down with the rain.
Oh, it's so
and
ridiculous.
That love is not capacity that is grown and requires focus and commitment. And that's why we have marriage vows, so that we understand what is the nature of the relationship and we are committed to it. We don't just bail. When in relationship we learn how to expand our capacity and our tools to love.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for us, that mission is a big, big mission, right? Busting this myth, because from the time we come out of the womb, we're sold this ridiculous idea that one day we'll be in the supermarket and our carts will bump against somebody and sparks will fly and we'll just magically, intuitively know how to make it work. And this myth is really wreaking havoc in all of our relationships. And so when Matthew and I, intentionally brought one another in, we're not high school sweethearts. We didn't meet in our 20s and our 30s. We didn't meet until after 40. And it was a very intentional, the things that we did as single people doing inner work on ourselves to be ready to bring in a beloved, to bring in a true soul partnership is something that we really intentionally worked at. And let's face it, everything in life we're told we should do intentionally, right? The career that we want, it's not going to come knocking on our door, right? We have to do something about that. If we want to
there's a challenge with this. So I'm kind of jumping in.
Please.
But
Sure.
most of us organize around outcome. That's how we've been taught. So even when we have a career, we fixate on the outcome, what we want it to look like. And what gets lost, from my perspective, is, well, what is that outcome an expression of? What's the quality? Because that'll take us farther than the outcome-driven thinking. And as this relates to relationships, it's interesting, as Barnett brought up the vows, which from my perspective is critical. What's the agreement? More importantly, is there a sense of vision? And then from the perspective of, are there practices? I mean, you guys are talking about an apology practice. Mm-hmm. So there's actually a ritualistic way that we know that we can reconnect, because that's part of the vision or the vow or whatever it is you set up by being intentional. So this relationship stuff is not, it takes, to have a mature relationship, takes a level of personal responsibility, right?
Well, definitely.
And some skills.
I mean, our soul wants connection, right? As beings, as human creatures, we are social by nature. We want to feel connected. We want to feel that, whether it's connection to another person, connection to source, whatever it is, we're yearning for that. And yet we think that we get it through agreement. We think that we get it through going, oh, you're like me, you agree with me, and so now we can be connected. And that's not the way we get it. We always say that agreement is an ego desire. It's a desire for you to understand and see and agree with me and my point of view. And one of the reasons why we can have a big blowout 2 days ago and be where we are right now is because we don't care about agreement, we care about connection. And connection requires what you said. I'm coming a long way around to what you started with, which is responsibility. Connection requires responsibility because it requires me to say, this is my stuff. This is my fear. This is my anger. This is my hurt coming up. I own that. It's not about you. It's about some old story I have from childhood.
Well, and then that's very easy as an apology to accept, because the apology is a level of personal responsibility. So when you're owning, like, look, I know what happened last night. I don't know what your experience of it is, but here's how it feels to be me. And I want to own what part of it I know I played. That's an easy way to then move towards, okay, I can now see you and love you. That's when you say the fight actually brings us deeper. I can concur with. That's the consciousness from which that statement is true.
Exactly.
Well, really where we find that the disconnect is that we're not taught that we, these skills that take us to that place. Because most people are conflict avoidant. And really when you're avoiding a conflict, then you're avoiding that opportunity for a deeper connection. Because every time there's a conflict, that just says that, hey, there's an opportunity for deeper connection.
Well, it pops the bubble of the fantasy.
It's interesting that how you put that we're not taught. And clearly we're not taught that. But it is not necessarily a tutorial. It's not modeled. We don't see it being expressed that way as children with our parents. That's not how they relate to one another. We don't see it in the media. We don't see it in our environment. We don't see it in our educational system. We often hear skill sets being taught, but they are not aligned with how people are being and how they're behaving. And as you both mentioned a little earlier, it does always start with the self. A relationship with another cannot be anything, cannot have any more intimacy than one has with oneself. You have to begin a relationship with yourself. You prepared for each other as single people by developing an intimacy with yourself.
Well, you can't say, I take responsibility for this anger because this is about my feeling of insecurity around this issue without knowing yourself. Without having some of that intimate knowledge of what triggers you, having some of that intimate knowledge about where your stuff comes from. And it's not that we blame anybody. I mean, we're modeling people who modeled people who modeled people who modeled people.
Anybody who had
centuries,
a mother or a father who had a mother or a father who had a mother. So there is room for a lot of care and forgiveness for who we have become. And love and moving love after fear is the process of advancing through the doorway past all those ideas about who we really are and who we unexamined.
Well, that's exactly it. Matthew and I say that, that really it's that realization that, wait, I'm the common denominator in all of my relationships, right? I'm the common denominator. So if something is going to change, then it has to change within me. and that change will be reflected outside of me. I mean, I grew up in a home with a lot of abuse. I mean, my mom was a Holocaust survivor. My dad was a rageaholic, and there was emotional abuse and physical abuse. And you know, for me, I really felt broken. I excelled in the workplace. You know, when we talk about like having a career, I had a career in entertainment that most people envy, you know, when they think of having a career in entertainment. And
As a matter of fact,
yeah.
we made a film together.
Yeah.
A really beautiful film about largely about just this point, called Homeless to Harvard.
Yeah, and what's so beautiful about that movie is because Liz broke the pattern, because she knew that she had to change something inside of her, and that, you know, that what really so much of the work that we're doing in the world is to let people know, look, it doesn't matter what was in your past. It doesn't matter the mistakes that you've made, that you're worthy of loving exactly as you are right now. But you have to believe that yourself in order to create that change.
A big piece of it for me, and I suspect that it'll resonate with a lot of people. I want to get your feedback on this. Had I grown up in an environment where I was acknowledged for not for what I did, but for who I am, things would have been very different. Now, those people that raised me, they did a beautiful enough job that, because I'm not insane, and I am here, they raised me sufficiently together that I could undertake to put Humpty Dumpty back together again all by myself, and then to be able to meet the world from that. So I want your reflection on that, being known for who I am, not for what I do.
Well, one of the things that happens to us all as we come into this world, you know, that if you've been around a newborn baby, they are the human embodiment of the energy of love, right? They give and receive love very freely. But we learn, as you learned, as we all learn, that love is conditional. And we have a need when we come into this world. We have a need to feel loved and to feel safe. And in order to get those needs met, we will take on any belief, any shape, any form to receive that.
Yeah, we adapt.
We adapt. And, you know, so many people that we talk to and work with, they're still trying to get those people, their parents, to love them the way they want to be loved. And that's the battle that we all have to stop. Stop trying to get somebody who can't love you the way you want to be loved.
But first you have to really understand the, you call it the adaptive behaviors, the blueprinting,
Yes.
the strategy, the recipe that we have come to lead our lives out of.
We call it your love imprint.
Your imprint, and we're like fish in water. We're so in that we're not aware that we're following a dance chart.
Well, and
one of the things
about that, which is tricky, is the first step of awareness, where we see the adaptive patterns even of perception, that we see the filtering of how we see the world, our worldview, that was a hand-me-down, is one of the initial responses is to react to it. I don't want to be that. And for me, that's the big challenge. It's the idea that something is broken, that I need to be
It's the big whistle that says you are that.
Well, and
push off on
Because as long as you're reacting to it, yeah,
that's it. And
you're still caught in the story.
Well, and the way through it is actually to begin to embrace it and allow for it. It's one of the jokes on this show is, you know, this idea of sharing myself. We also always pluralize that. We say sharing myselves, right? Because at any given moment, one of the aspects of me may jump in the driver's seat and take the wheel, and especially in relationship, right? Because the modeling. And for so many years, you know, we've been around this model of relationship, namely our parents, that it's a unconscious sort of operating system. So to actually unwind that with compassion and have this sense that there's something else that we could create is a powerful shift for an individual to go through.
Absolutely. It's one it's one of the biggest joys of the work that we do with our clients. I mean, we just, went through the holidays, right? So all of our clients were home with their families, and we get on the phone that first week of January with them, and we're hearing about how, oh my gosh, I had this awareness, and I was able to really connect with, somebody in a different way, but I still was triggered over here. And it's this awareness piece is really that first indication. But back to what Barnett was saying, I really want to take this into that I think is really important to recognize that when we look at that love imprint, right, because we all have one, it isn't to lay a blame. And it's really to say, I know me. I picked my parents. You picked your parents. You picked your parents. Matthew picked his parents. That we chose those people because as spirit, as a soul, we said, this is my journey. I know for me, it was about valuing myself. I know that I had to learn to value myself. So I had to pick parents that didn't value me so that I could go on that journey myself. Because if I had picked parents that, really saw me and valued me and heard me, then I wouldn't be on that journey. I would be on a completely different journey.
Sure.
And so as a soul, I think we choose our parents. Matthew and I talk about this all the time, that we have this really deep belief that each one of us picks the path before we even show up here on planet Earth, that we are already aware of what that bigger journey is about.
Beautiful.
So your journey of awareness of becoming very close and tender with your imprint allows you to open to and receive more and more love, first creating this incredible relationship and then extending what you have learned in that primary relationship out to all of your other relationships, becoming more and more of an artist of love. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to throw it to both of you. I'm going to let you think about this over the break. What does the future vision look like for you? Imagine yourselves 5 years down the road with considerably more dimensional love imprinting territory owned and integrated. What would that relationship look like? What would your world look like?
Which we will cover
right
when we
after
take
this
a break. So stay with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain, with Orna and Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us again. And before we left to break, first of all, I love the love artist. I love that expression. I don't know if that's organic in the moment, but the idea that you guys are love artists and that you're co-creating something. Something that has a sense of vision to it. So Barnett asked, and Matthew, I'll ask you,
sure,
what's the vision?
It's a interesting question because we don't normally think this way. We could think this. You've said, where would I be 5 years in my career? Where would I be 5 years in my health? Those are things I can answer. But 5 years in who I am in love as a love artist. And the word that comes to me is kindness, is that I step deeper into kindness for myself, kindness for my own mistakes, kindness for the journey my wife is on, kindness for the journey that everyone's on. We have this experience when we're working with a client that we get their story, right? We hear all their stuff, and there's a moment where it's like there's a click in my head, and I go, I get it. I get why you are where you are. And if we knew everyone's story, the person who's cutting us off on the freeway, the jerk in front of us at Starbucks, whatever it is, if we knew everyone's story, then we could go, oh, I get it. I get why you're doing this. And I don't need to take any of this personally. So it's that. It's like that combination of kindness and not taking anything personally, because it's not.
So you become this presence that is filled with compassion and care and understanding. So you're not just having understanding, you're being understanding. And the world, I'm going to jump in on your own question here, or on my question to you, but I asked it because I am pondering this a lot now, and I realize that there is a point in threading the personal blueprint, the personal imprint, the love imprint. There comes a point in that love personal love imprint and the work we do on it becomes the world imprint. And our personal exploration has impact on the world. And so to the degree we become more and more connected with love, at some point it flips and the world begins to become more and more connected with love.
And the eyes through which we're choosing to see. I love that your vision is equality, kindness. Because again, it's similar to what I said earlier, that so many times when you ask someone about a vision, they start doing goals and they start thinking in terms of outward, expressions, the outcome. And when you think about a relationship, well, what's the outcome? If you're not married, you can say, well, I'd be married. But in the case of a relationship that's established, I love that. What are the qualities that you're personally vested in generating and creating more of in your relationship? Kindness. I love that. Because it's a wise orientation. Again, it's so easy to slip into, and I think of it even for our jobs and other things, that, well, what if my job is to be more kind? What if that's the quality in whatever I'm doing, selling, insurance, but it's really about generating and creating more kindness. That is really a noble vision from my perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually got through a difficult, you talk about jobs, right? Before we were together and I was just starting to build things on my own, building businesses, I still had a job. And it was a rough time. And I thought, how do I get through this? And I chose at that moment, service was my choice. How can I be of service at this place I don't want to be at? And sometimes that meant being of service meant, well, I'm going to show up with a smile today and just be in a good mood. That's my way to be of service. Sometimes it meant that I had to talk to somebody and speak an uncomfortable truth with them about a situation. That was being of service. And so it's like when we think about it in this way, it changes because it comes from here. It's not about, like you said, it's not external. Yeah. But I want to hear what she's got to say.
Yes, Orna. So you've heard that. What was the impact of that, of seeing that in Matthew's life, and how does that come home to your relationship?
Wow, that's a lot there. That really touched me so deeply to hear him say kindness. We talked about vows, and in our vows, we had always in forgiveness in our vows. And
that's pretty kind.
I joke that I wasn't born with a very well-developed forgiveness muscle. Like if you look at my chart, I have a Scorpio moon, and I had a lot of anger and resentment. Like, there's that Buddha quote, holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And I remember when I first heard that quote, and I was in my late 20s, and it stopped me on a dime, because I was like, I'm poisoning myself. I'm killing myself because I'm angry at all these other people. And that was such a huge moment for me. I can remember exactly where I was, like what I was wearing. Like time slowed down when I first heard that quote, because I realized that I was holding on to all of these things, and they weren't holding anybody back or hurting anyone but myself. And so I spent a year working on forgiveness. I read like every book, everything that I could find about forgiveness. And I worked for a solid year to develop a forgiveness muscle. And one of the things I discovered about myself is that it was easier for me to forgive other people than it was myself. I would hold myself to this unrealistic high standard of, a perfection that wasn't attainable.
There's a bit of self-hatred in that. The setup of a quote-unquote high standard is, I know I'll fail.
Absolutely. And it's, it created a very much like a hamster on a wheel life that I used to live, that I was like, how do I get off this wheel? And I realized, I built it so I can dismantle it. And because what I realized in this journey of valuing myself, which I talked about, I really believe that was my soul. That's my soul's purpose. Part of my purpose here is to learn how to really love and value and honor me. And so along in that journey, part of that was that I constantly had to overcome something. Because when I overcame an obstacle, when I overcame a challenge, then I could value me. But what I did along with that is I married struggle. I married always having to have a challenge. Because the only time I ever valued myself is when there was something I overcame. So then I had to work to, I joke that I divorced struggle. Like, struggle can't find me. Struggle doesn't have my address, my phone number. They can't text me, can't email me. There's a decree that there's, to step into ease. and that struggle is not part of that anymore, because there's nothing I have to do to value me. That we really aren't human doings. We are human beings.
Sure.
And that if I could really be with myself and say, I don't have to live this unrealistic, I don't have to have this goal outside myself that I'll never attain, that's not what life is about. Life ultimately is not about a struggle. It's ultimately, how do I be of service? And that's really how I would answer that question. You know, Matthew touched on it a little bit, but for me, it's, how do I be of service? And the first person I have to serve first is me. So if I can serve myself first, then I'm capable of really being of service to others. Because then I'm not feeling angry or resentful, because I'm giving from a place where I don't feel that I've gone into sacrifice to be of service.
Yeah. It's the love your neighbor as yourself, with yourself being the hardest one to love. That's where the whole thing kind of tips. Go ahead,
So
Barnett.
beautiful, so beautiful. So you have made a life's work and calling of exploring love and being guides. You're the Virgil for so many through their exploration of love. And you've developed more and more capacity in yourselves to hold love and to be loving. And many have found that the more that they love, the more comes up with the more you love, the fear of loss of love. That is, there's some sort of like homeostasis there. There are, of course, responses to that, and I'd like to hear you guys speak to that point.
We call it pretzel twisting.
Pretzel twisting.
Right?
Nice.
Right? What shape can I take? What form can I take to get you to love me?
Yeah.
And when we find ourselves pretzel twisting, one of the things we say a lot is do you want to sacrifice your happiness for someone else's comfort? Because that's mostly what we do. We have a friend who when the last man she was with broke up with her, one of the things he said was, well, you're never satisfied with the first table at the restaurant.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. And my wife is the same way, right? And that's somebody who's willing to sacrifice his whole enjoyment of his meal by sitting at a bad table because he doesn't want to make the hostess of the restaurant uncomfortable. And how often are we doing that? How often are we saying, I'm going to hold back, I'm going to pretzel twist, I'm going to shape shift, whatever it is, so that you're comfortable. But I'm going to be miserable.
So this is a boundary conversation.
We're
And
talking
now
about
we are
self-betraying.
we're going to a whole nother octave of conversation. I'm not sure how we are for time, because I do want to go down this road.
I want to say something about this. I'm sure Spence will give us a number, but the self-betraying, that's the principle of the argument, is that can we each stand for our own experience without gripping it too tightly, but represent it, and then be able to hold the other person's experience, and come to a place where, wow, okay, I can honor your experience and still honor mine without self-betraying. That's, I think, what you're talking about, because the pretzel twisting is a way of self-betraying. I don't want you to leave me. I'm scared of what Barnett brought up, the fear and the love thing. If I stand in my authority, then you're going to not like me and then leave. But then catching yourself saying, I don't want a pretzel twist. I want to be authentic, and then we'll work it out on the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's really the key. You nailed it. It's the authenticity piece. I mean, there have been times, I can think back times early on in our relationship where I thought, if I say this, he might leave.
Yeah.
But I have to say this
Bingo.
anyway. And every time he amazed me, because not only did he stay, but he stepped up. And so I was like, I mean, honestly, I don't even know that I have the words for it, because the fear was so intense. I mean, I had such a fear of abandonment. I mean, I remember early on there was an argument we had where Matthew looks at me and he goes, oh, we're just having an argument. We're going to get to the other side. I'm not going anywhere. And I was like, huh?
Barnett, you say that in relation with Sandy. It's that we know that no one's jumping ship.
Well, that is going back to our conversation that we talked a little earlier about the nature of the vows. The vows are designed to be kept current. we sort of take these vows,
Such a great
and then
point.
we throw rice.
Yep.
We honeymoon.
20 years
We
later,
throw
forget about it.
our subconscious at each other, a projection for about 6-7 years. Then it gets real. And now is the time to really double down on remembering what those vows were about. And those vows are that this is a safe place. I am committed to you. I am looking deep into a mirror. I am seeing my own triggers. I am now beginning to self-nurture and self-heal all of my imprinting. And it is through you that I am becoming aware of my self-imprinting and vice versa. So this is not the time to bail out and to start over again with somebody else and go through that in order. Now starts the real relationship making. This is the real task here. And then there are certain boundaries of what were my knee-jerk imprinting behaviors. And can I step into a new boundary, as you were talking about yourself? Can I hold myself present and in my aliveness in the face of an argument?
Well, on this journey, as you begin this process of awakening and looking at and being authentic and expressing, often as we get stuck in a moment where we think our emotions are everything. We think it's all about our emotions, and we start having this conversation. Well, I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, and it becomes almost a fist bump.
You hurt me.
You hurt me, right? You hurt me, and what we always say is, emotions, expressing your emotions, being authentic is a way of valuing yourself, a way of being authentic. It's a way of, saying I matter. But also, emotions are momentary. They're like
if you feel them and let them go.
Feel them and let them go, right? So if you're like, I am hurt, and then you're like, you express it, and you go, okay, well, I can let go of that now because it's now out of me.
And in their natural state, emotions are mixed. So a lot of times we like to take, our brains like to organize them into a single dimension and stick with that.
Make sense.
Yeah.
We're going to take it inherently something that is from, as our friend John Gray says, from Mars. You're going to try and put it on another planet. The mind does not operate in there are two separate being states. I see that we are drilling down with. I don't have my glasses on.
I do. So
I want to just ask you about some of where we can find out, where our listeners can learn more about who you are, what you're all about, and what you're offering and bringing to the world, and when is that going to all happen?
Oh, you're so sweet. Our website is creatingloveonpurpose.com. So at creatingloveonpurpose.com. And we also have this event that Barnet is going to take part in. It's our 4th annual Love on Purpose Revolution this year. I can't believe we're moving into year number 4. And it's a free event. We're going to be interviewing 25 top experts in love, dating, sex, intimacy, relationship. There's really something for everyone, and it's free to join. So you can go to loveonpurposerevolution.com and get in on all the fun starting March 17th. Now, if you sign up in the pre-registration period, you get some really great bonuses from our experts. So if you're listening to this between March 3rd and the 16th, run, don't walk to your nearest computer and get all these great bonuses at loveonpurposerevolution.com.
And, of course, you can get all of this on this Cutting Edge Consciousness website, which, of course, we'll post. And thank you both for joining us. It's been awesome. Feels like the conversation just started. I'm sure we'll have more of this conversation.
More. We'll do it again.
And we look forward to having you back.
We'll do it
for
again.
those of you listening, we, of course, invite you to keep coming back and joining us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.